Hey everyone! And the question we're here today to ask is how can we bridge human intelligence and artificial intelligence? Welcome to Invincible Innovation Live. I'm Mazor, Kario, innovation and value creation expert, and I'll be your host. And today with me, I have a very good friend and a great person, Alon Harris.
Hi there, Adi. Good morning, and hi to everyone listening.
Oh, I'm so happy to see you here. We talked in the past, and I know it's going to be so interesting and insightful. So I'm calm. Alon is the head of data science training lab at Bayer. And we're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, and you're much invited to join the discussion and ask questions, and we would love to hear from you, right?
Just a little confession from my side. I'm really excited today.
Yes.
This is my first LinkedIn Live broadcast, so thank you, Adi. And it's a huge privilege being on your show after seeing so many wonderful guests before. I hope I don't let the audience down.
No way, like we've done so many talks, and I know it's going to be fun. So we're on a good path, so we can start. So tell us about the data science and innovation training program that you developed.
It's it's one of my favorite questions.
And
So I think maybe to kind of bring this story into context, I'm going to go back to 2017. And I got on a plane from Tel Aviv to Berlin to meet my very good colleagues, Melanie and Timo, in Bayer's offices in Berlin. And we're sitting in a room in front of this giant whiteboard. And the objective of this brainstorming session was to create a program that would enable us to upskill our amazing scientists in Bayer in this domain of data science and artificial intelligence. And towards this meeting, we'd conducted interviews. We tried to learn what the realities on the ground are, what are the different perspectives that we should be considering, what would be a meaningful training journey for these wonderful scientists. And we learned that there's a bridge that needs to be built. It's not sufficient enough to teach people to be literate in this type of technology. I mean, that is an important element of teaching terms and core concepts. But if you really want them to embrace this way of thinking and be creative and be entrepreneurial and spread this to their environment, we needed to invent something that isn't a classical training program about knowledge transfer. We had to create something more, I would say, immersive. And so we decided on that day that we're going to call our program the R&D Tech Immersion, with the idea that people are going to be thrown in the deep end and have to swim in this new domain by trying to solve real challenges that we were facing back then in different scientific domains, and try, as they go through this journey, to apply what they learn in the training to real data, real users, real business dynamics, and also kind of deal with the real constraints of life.
yeah.
And what we were kind of looking for is something that makes it extremely personal and extremely real. And we thought that that would bridge these two areas of human intelligence and artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and I know that in many cases, the engineers, they are so good in the details, in the technical stuff, but to really convey the ideas and to spread the message is so it's a different talent, I would say. So it's something that you need to know.
I think it's a very good point you're raising, because part of the preparation for this program we had to invent was we did some market research. We wanted to see what are the training solutions that are available for anyone who wants to do this in their organization, so that people would be able to apply artificial intelligence in real circumstances. And we saw that there was a strict kind of dichotomy. You either had training programs that were extremely technical, basically saying if you want to navigate in this domain, you're going to have to learn to code, you're going to have to learn very advanced mathematics and statistics. Or we found programs that were focused more on innovation, bringing in approaches like design thinking, lean startup, agile, business model canvas, but they weren't necessarily applying it or using these methods specifically dealing with data science and
Right.
artificial intelligence. So we tried to create this hybrid and try and
Yeah.
strike a balance between these two, because that's what we wanted. We wanted people to appreciate the technology, but understand that you have to have skills to solve problems with it, and that requires a different toolkit.
And how did you really train these people? It needs to be a very unique way of merging these two.
Yeah, so it was a very big whiteboard, and
Yeah.
the reason it was very big is because we were looking for a journey that would take a few months. We didn't want this to be one of those experiences where you leave your job for a week or two and then come back. We thought that that wouldn't create the necessary change, so we built a program that had multiple milestones that you go through as a team. And the teams were constructed on purpose with one data scientist and about 4 to 5 life scientists. They could be people who spend their day to day in labs, or people who are dealing with scientific business processes. And each team was given a real challenge at the very get go. So they knew from the start that the business is expecting them to come
Yeah.
up with something that will solve or address a burning challenge. And what we did is we created um, points in time where they would learn, and a lot of time in between where they would explore, where they would apply. And this kind of created this kind of an accordion. And instead of a high intensity, short engagement, it created something that I think was more balanced and enabled them also to be opportunistic, because one of the great things when you do a program over time is that things change in the business, things change in the market, things change in the technological arena. And we wanted them to think as well opportunistically of, how do I ride on this opportunity, how do I tap
Yeah.
into this business decision.
Yeah, I really agree with you. In many cases, these like interventions are very short, and it's like there is this hype of, yeah, we're there, and then they need to really execute it, and it's so much harder than when you're dripping it one after the other. It's like seeding one after the other, and then it's growing in the end, and you are not really in one point of the
You
time.
know how many times I've seen this dynamic? I mean, I've been coaching and training in the innovation domain for more than 10 years, and I understand why we sometimes do those types of activities that totally
Yeah,
disconnect you. But what happens is you get such a cold shower and such a cold shoulder from the people you rely on later that it doesn't actually create business impact. Yeah, and I think what we wanted in this training program to tell the businesses, yes, it's about giving skills to people, but we are very serious about your challenges. And a good example of how we did that was we ensured that the program ended with a pitch to very senior executives asking for real money, asking for these projects not to just stay as a sandbox practice topic, but actually evolve into real projects. And I'm very proud to say that that's exactly what we were able to achieve. We were able to migrate projects in a training context to projects in a real digital pipeline.
yeah.
And to date, I think about 15 projects, 15 to 20
Wow.
projects received funding. So that's a
Wow.
good indication.
Yeah, it is, and it's exceptional. In many cases, the number of projects that really go live and stay alive afterwards is very, very small for so many reasons. So, what would be the main obstacles for a digital transformation like that?
Mm. Well, wow. I think, it's a jungle of obstacles and
Yeah,
risks. And
right.
in a way, I think part of the damage that all the hype does, it creates a romance around these
Yeah,
technologies. And
yeah.
what
There
we
is
purposely,
this the hype
yeah,
around AI is like wow. I think it's the highest right now. I guess.
every few years we have a hype around something,
Yeah,
and even within AI there are subtopics that get hyped in different phases over time. And I think hype is sometimes just a necessity to get attention, to get awareness, to get funding, to get resources, to be allowed to experiment. But it's not a sufficient enough
yeah.
condition to see tangible business outcomes. So the risks,
Sure.
I think, or the risks, I think the first primary risk in digital transformation is not knowing what the risks are.
Yeah.
because that type of romantic perspective says, you know what, let's just jump in, let's build a model, let's get all this data, let's try,
Yeah.
and hopefully there'll be this moment in time where we click a button, everybody will love our idea, the machine will give such an amazing output, and we're all going to make a big, change in the world. And
Yeah.
of course the reality is not that. So we
Yeah.
have, I think, three categories of risks. We have strategic risks. That means that we might be investing our energy on solving challenges that are not linked to where the business is heading, to the North Star that we should be following. And I think that is very important to take into consideration. What's the broad context of what the business wants to do in the future? Who do we want to be, and what is the value we want to provide? And how do our efforts with these new technologies accelerate our ability to get there? Of course, there's technical
Sure.
risks and technical hurdles. I've heard so many people saying the following: I'm sitting on a gold mine. I have so much data. I feel that all I need is a clever data scientist, and we're going to be able to get
Yeah.
diamonds out of the rough.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah. There
reality
it is.
is, there is no magic. And in many cases, there is a process of disillusionment because you don't have enough data, or the data might not be accessible or findable, the quality might be low. And in many of these applications, like machine learning or deep learning, you need very large quantities
Yeah.
of data, but
Of
the
good
quality
data.
that and good data. So, of course, this links to IT infrastructure and how data is generated, etc. But I would
Yeah.
say the one that's most interesting for me. Oh, sorry, I stopped you in the middle.
Yeah, I want to say about the quantity of data. I heard someone from google.org, and they had AI projects for medical domain. And he said that the main obstacle for them is to get the data. And I said to myself, it's Google. The
Mm.
problem is data for Google. I know there is all these privacy issues with the hospitals, and but still, can you just encrypt it or something? Like, can't you get the data? And if he's saying that, I guess that many
Yeah.
other companies find it challenging.
And look, at Bayer, we have more than 15,000 scientists in our R&D organization. We are a data-rich, data-driven organization, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the data that is generated in the day-to-day, in the systems that we use, or in the processes that we apply, that they necessarily are good enough or applicable enough for these AI applications. And sometimes it means that you have to realize that there's a constraint in terms of data availability and quality, but it doesn't mean it's the end of the road. It just means you might have to adjust your vision,
Yeah. Or
or
work harder.
work harder to reconstruct the IT architecture and sometimes the data generation front ends to totally shift the processes of data generation and curation. It's not just about quantity and quality, it's also to do with standards. You need data to be labeled in certain ways, etc. And there's
Yeah.
uh, and in many cases, it's kind of, I'm sure I'm speaking to people out there that they will recognize it. Sometimes the issue is that people in an organization have their data on their laptops and not in the central data pool or data
Yeah.
hub, and that's also an issue. So lots of
Yeah.
technical hurdles there, but
Yeah.
for me, the most interesting and most complicated hurdle is not the strategic one, it's not the technical one, it's the cultural one, because we're trying to introduce a new way of leveraging our data to solve real world problems. But in the middle are people who've been used to working in a certain way, making decisions in a certain way. And when always you're trying to use something that is a novel technology, it comes with either hyped expectations or fear. And so it takes time to make your culture, your organizational culture, starting from the top in your leadership team, but all the way down, to be open,
Yeah.
to trying out these new technologies and to trusting them and believing that they can deliver. And that's a journey that doesn't get solved,
Yeah.
overnight.
Yeah, yeah. I think especially with AI, the aspect of fear is even more with the new technology because many people connect it to like the robots will come and take our jobs or something like that. And
Yeah, so things in Hollywood sometimes are more scary than in reality. And I think what we try to do in this program purposely is create a more realistic expectation and align people on what these technologies can really deliver today versus where the ambition is in the future. And that's a very humbling experience. um, so for example, I think we have a lot of wish in different business areas to move into predictive analytics. That's where
yeah,
your machines are basically helping you predict certain outcomes so that you can navigate your decision making accordingly. And sometimes it's just premature to move to that domain, and you have to maybe begin with something a bit more modest, like visual analytics, which is just making your data more accessible and being able to explore it through visual aids and tools. And that sometimes is perceived as maybe a lower kind of
yeah,
on the hierarchy, a
yeah,
lower
not
grade
that
analytics,
sophisticated.
not that sexy, not that sophisticated. But to be honest, if it's helping you take positive steps to solving your challenge,
Yeah,
you have to do it, and it's a great place to begin.
yeah. And I think it's a way for people to be more like willing to be part of it, because they say, oh, okay, it's not instead of us, it's like helping us make better decisions. So it's another step on the way, and
Yeah.
it's really important.
I think it's so important what you just said. The key word for me is amplify. The AI should be a tool to amplify human intelligence. It's not self-serving. We don't do predictive analytics or all these different applications just to prove that we could. It's got to help the people who are experts, who have authority, who have access to resources, to the decision makers. We need to help them amplify their intelligence. We mustn't forget that at the end of the day, um, there is so much value in experience and expertise. I'm thinking, in our company, we're dealing with health and we're dealing with nutrition. So think of a doctor or think of a farmer. When you bring data to them or when you bring insights to them, they see things that only they can see because of the years of experience, because they're in the field, and because they're living, the realities. And so it's not something you can do in isolation in a lab alone and just expect that you or I could look at the same insights and perceive them the same.
Yeah,
So the idea is you have to bridge the user, the decision maker, the action taker to the insight. And I think that is where you either see companies succeed or fail. I think that's one of the major parts that are indicative of success or failure. How
yeah,
well did you be user centric and learn and remember that the technology needs to support the user,
sure.
and not just like a maybe just prove that you could create some sort of a cool output on a machine, but no
Yeah.
one uses it.
Yeah, or trusts it, or say, yeah, I trust what they're saying. Although, like 15 years, I've been doing my calculations alone with my Excels, and now you come and what is exactly what you're doing beneath the hood that I trust you to do better than me.
This is really important. We have to have empathy towards the people we're trying to help and support, and that empathy has to take into account that the way they make decisions today, it will not just be replaced overnight just because we have a cool
Yeah,
tool. It supports their professional confidence. It might be the source of their professional authority.
yeah,
It's a way for them to use their gut feeling and
yeah,
just kind of bringing in this new, different perspective on the same reality that they've been dealing with day in, day out. that
yeah.
that is something you have to monitor. You have to observe that that engagement.
Yeah, sure. I've done one project with a medical tests startup, and it was the first time I understood that it doesn't matter. The parameters could be very, very precise, but the person who really interprets the data is the one to decide if you have AIDS or not. So
Yeah.
you could have the same results in one country, and he will say, yes, you have AIDS, and in the other country, he'll say you don't have it. And for me, it was like just weird. There's a test. These are the numbers, and
Right.
it's much more complex than what we think. So
It's
there's
super complex.
so many
And
people who know that how to do these calculations and understanding, which is more than the numbers.
I think we need to remember as well when we're applying these or when we were building this program in a corporate setting, okay, not in a startup, but in a large corporation, then of course, one of the things you have to take into consideration is that if you're actually successful, you might actually be changing a whole process. You might be impacting not one person, but thousands of people in the way they work. Or if you think of a solution that we deliver to a customer, it's not one doctor, it might be thousands of doctors or hundreds of thousands of farmers. And so, one of the things you have to understand is that you're going to perhaps disrupt whole operating models, business models. That's at the extreme, right?
Yeah,
And that means that change management and communication are equally important to the technology you're developing.
sure.
The ability to easily and effectively convey why is the thing you're developing going to make everyone else's lives better. And I think
Yeah,
that's another weakness or another risk. I think
yeah,
scientists, data scientists, they have a richness of vocabulary. They have, and that's I think very important, of course, because that's an indication of their broad education. But when we speak to customers, even to executives, we have to translate, or we have to find a way to speak in the language of the audience in a way that
right.
they understand, because like you say, in many cases it's a black box, and trust in black boxes is a bit of a, that's a topic that, how do
Yeah.
you build that trust?
Yeah, and the trust needs to be from within the company, from the leaders and the managers and everyone who is involved, and from the other side of the clients and users. They both need to trust you that you're doing something that they get something better from it. And especially with leaders, it's really hard because let's say think even about how do the you get incentivized. Let's say you have like 100 people's that you are managing, and then this thing could be like you have 30% less people,
Mm.
so maybe you will not be so happy to bring something into your company and especially to your department and and change the way that you're incentivized.
I think you're mentioning a very important point, and that is what is the, or how do you manage these processes whereby the technology will perhaps take part of the existing tasks in the organization and automate them, etc. And I think a
Yeah,
responsible organization doesn't look at these technologies as a way of replacing people, but because the expertise you have in the organization is by far the most important asset. I think it's about making your experts work better, faster, with ease, leveraging their expertise, not wasting their time on manual or inefficient work.
yeah,
And we haven't, I think we have to be very careful as well as we build these new technologies into the company, that we don't create these fear scenarios or revolution scenarios, because the reality is so far from it. It
yeah,
takes a long time, even for the most simplest application of machine learning or deep learning. It takes time. And what we try in our program to do, what we try to do is ensure two things: that the user, the end user, is part of the journey from day one till the end of that 6-month program, and that the executives are part of the journey from day one till the end. We didn't want to lose sight of the emotional reactions and of the perspectives of the people who, in the end, are the benefactors of this technology. And we didn't want to lose sight with the strategic perspective either. So we basically had systematic engagements all along the
yeah,
journey. Um, because if you isolate the inventor and you work in a bubble, what happens is you have a clash of temperatures. You
yeah,
have something very hot meeting something very cold, and that just creates steam. So we wanted to mitigate that. And surprisingly, when users, especially again, if your users are in the organization and they are part of the definition of the vision, then that fear element is dramatically mitigated, because people own the narrative. You co-created it with them. And I think that's a far more sustainable way of doing this.
yeah, I agree. And this is another advantage of doing things which is like long lasting and not like this is what we decided and then try to sell it to these both sides because you are engaged in all through the way. We have someone telling us that data doesn't lie. Sanka Para, thank you. And you're right. People
It's
trust
a
it.
it but you know it's interesting on that comment is that today one of the topics we are discussing is human bias put into the data.
Yeah,
And I think what we have to be very, very careful with is we should not perceive data as this all objective element in the universe, because that data was generated most likely with human intention or with human intervention in place.
yeah, right.
A good example is, you know, if you're calling a call center of some company and they're typing down notes based on the call, that person, based on their mood in that day and based on the words they use in that day, is influencing the data. It's not purely objective.
Of course,
And
and you see it in image recognition too, that they took all the pictures from the web, and most of them are white male. So you cannot be equally objective to anything, right?
yeah, so gender equality is an interesting element. So I've heard some use cases about trying to use these methods to better recruit talents. And so if your historical data of your own organization is based on a bias towards a certain, you know, let's say, like you
Sure,
said, gender, then don't expect the machine to provide you necessarily with a different output, because it's going to be rewarded as it learns based on the historic successes. And
sure.
so bias in data is something that is very a hot topic, and also the explainability of the AI. So today we're talking about how can we explain how the machine came to the positive outcome, because sometimes we were very, very pleased with the success rate of a certain
Yeah,
model, but we don't necessarily know why. And
yeah,
so these are topics that scientists today are dealing with, making things more explainable. So I think when we say AI, it sounds like an isolation of humans, but the truth
yeah,
is, it's about humans in the entry point when we generate the data, and it's about humans at the end point when we use the insights to take action. It's all about humans. It's
yeah.
about humans and machines and their relationship.
Right. I one of the cases that I went to talk, I think it was in Austria. In one of the conferences, they brought Boston Dynamics, you know, with the robots, which are very like,
Mhm.
yeah, they look very impressive and very fearful, I would say. And one of the scientists who talked in the convention, he said that if we would have known what they know, nobody would really believe that machines will ever conquer the earth, because it took so long just to make them flip and and turn. Like it looks so impressive in the video, but they know how much work was done in order to create that.
Yes, yes, and this is a, I think, especially in an organization like the one I'm in, we're very ambitious about the way we are using science and the way we're using data science. And I think, yes, you do want a vision, a long-term vision that is, I would say, audacious. You want something there in the horizon that is going to inspire, and that might be a bit sounding like something science fiction or out of a movie. So if you don't have that spark that the future could be dramatically different than the present, you know, why would anyone be an innovator or
Yeah,
an entrepreneur? Having
yeah,
said that, what we try and did in this program is teach people how to show how you get from here to there. And the approach we took was to say, try and build a roadmap to your very, you know, lofty vision in 5 increments. We chose the number 5 because 3 is too few. It's too, you have too big chunks. The chunks are too big. And 10, no executive would ever approve of a roadmap with so many steps.
yeah,
So try and show 5 increments. And the condition was, in each increment, A, you have to deliver value, even if it's modest. So the idea is, what can you do in 6 months, despite all the constraints that people will say, oh, this is going to help me make a better medical decision or health related decision or agriculture related decision. And the idea is, if you are successful in each of these steps individually, only then do you progress to the next. It's kind of an agile
yeah,
mindset. Each step is an experiment, but you are promising that in each step you deliver certain value. And you know what? It's a very hard exercise to do,
yeah. It's hard.
because you're trying to get to a very kind of big vision, and the realities are sometimes highly constrained. Let's remember, you know, resources, time, regulation, availability of data. And so I would say the hardest steps in this journey are steps 3 and 4. It's that middle zone. Okay, it's like where can I? How do I bridge between current present that is highly constrained and that future in which I believe I will have all the available resources I have. And but you know what? It's really helped us to build stories this way and to align expectations this way, because people are then not expecting that overnight you will reach the moon, and overnight there'll be this magical machine where you click a button and it will tell you what the next big drug you
Yeah,
need to develop is. That is
sure.
very dangerous.
Yeah. And I think that it gives you as an entrepreneur a vision which is like you could perceive it and you could tell the story about it. It's not enough that you could understand that it's achievable. You could tell others, this is the way I'm going to achieve it. And then it's more accessible and it's very important.
And we found that if the vision has that emotional component, because it's not just about mitigating the number of mistakes you make, or just making better decisions. It's about people's quality of life. It's about mitigating disease. It's about increasing the yield of a farm, and it's about making livelihood of those farmers better. You will find that if your vision is really inspiring, you will find partners. You will find others who will want to come on board and take part in that vision. And I've seen many of our projects that we incubated in the program grow into partnerships or open innovation opportunities with academia, with startups, with other organizations externally, because they might have a different approach or a different set of skills, but the vision is where we have a common ground. And I think that's a very important reason to really well articulate your vision, and
Yeah.
you'll find that you're not the only one with that same vision.
Sure. So what would be your number one tip for innovation leaders?
Wow, we could take a whole day. It wouldn't be
Yeah,
one
right.
tip. So I think one of the things that we tend to do when we speak about innovation or innovation with technology, like in the digital aspect, is we put a lot of focus on the idea generation process, on the possibilities, on the exciting part of the journey, which is how can we solve a problem, right? But I think we don't put enough effort or enough energy as innovation leaders in making sure that the best ideas get experimented, validated, and implemented at scale. And scale is a big issue. It's a big hurdle. Implementation is a thing that isn't always waking up in the morning feeling excited and being able to get an animator to sketch and help you bring an idea to life on visually. It's tough. It's an uphill battle. It's about managing a lot of resistance. It's about frustration sometimes because it's all experimental. And so I would say to the innovation leaders, one thing is be very cognizant of what your implementation mechanisms are and how you enable them to be agile and scalable. But on the other hand, make sure that the people you put in place to drive these projects are absolutely crazy about that vision. If
Yeah.
they perceive this as project management per se, they will not get to the finish line.
Yeah.
They will burn too early. You need someone who is so crazy in love with that vision that they have the energy to overcome all the hurdles, to stay persistent, to have that courage to deal with the resistance, because that is entrepreneurship, or that is entrepreneurship in our context in reality. There is no red carpet that somebody says, you know what, I have an empty check for you. Where do I sign? You know
Yeah.
what, you need these experts. Here they are. You know what, you need me to change the IT architecture and our internal processes. For sure, we can do it overnight.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not reality.
Yeah, I think that in general, the life of an entrepreneur is something that it's like a roller coaster. You need to be
Oh
able
my God.
mentally to do that. It's
And
hard.
that roller coaster, I think, experience. We had a participant in our second cohort. So we ran this program 3 times. We had 100 alumni, and one of the alumni was asked by us to write an article to share internally, so that others would be able to kind of connect to what was the experience going through the
Yeah.
program.
Yeah.
So from an outside perspective, you see, okay, in this month they learned this, in this month they did hackathon, in this month they got trained on this topic. It looks so obvious, but the title he used was my roller coaster, my data science roller
Wow.
coaster, and had this image of a roller
Wow.
coaster going 360. Because what they learned, and this is, I think, all entrepreneurs would know, is that where you begin, that initial understanding of the problem and of the solution you need to put in place, that is going to change through this journey. You have to have a thick skin to deal with all these dynamics and emotions. And when we did a hackathon in each of these programs. So, like my last cohort, we did 10 hackathons because we had 10 teams in 1 week. It was kind of nuts.
Wow.
You come out of the hackathon sometimes re-energized because the technology has proven your hypothesis, or you come out actually going, uh-oh, situation is worse. If you stop at that point with discouragement, you're never going to be able to ride this roller coaster for a very long time. And that stamina, I think, is very important for entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs alike.
Yeah, I think that there is this flexibility, which a mental flexibility that you need in order to really hold this inside and to go through all these changes and hurdles and trials. And I'm looking to the side because I have this note in my office saying exceptional people convert life setbacks into future successes. It's Carol Dweck,
It's a
and I always
beautiful.
have it. Yeah, I have it in front of me because I really believe in that. Like you
It's
need to have that.
it goes, and I think it goes very deep into who you are and how you perceive life. And I think for many people, this program that we thought was all going to be up here in the intellectual domain became a very personal experience, because when you get to that finish line, after all you've gone through and all the changes, etc., you've learned something about yourself, your tools,
Yeah.
and also I think you've learned about the power of the team. So I think one of the issues we're facing in the technology arena or innovation, digital innovation arena, is we're looking for these unicorns, people who can do this and this and this and this. So they're technology experts, and they're communicative, and they're entrepreneurial, and they're open-minded, and they can take others with you on the journey. And of course, you might find one unicorn like that, but unicorns are so rare. And I believe we need to shift to the perception of unicorn teams, where each person is very distinctively talented in one of these areas, and it's the chemistry between them that does the magic. And this takes time. Teams don't just appear. That team culture, that ability to communicate across disciplines, that ability to deal with hurdles together, that is not something that will happen just by putting people in a room and hoping that they'll come up with good ideas and solutions. That has to be nurtured, and I think reflected on as these dynamics take place during the journey. So one of the nice things we did in our second and third cohorts is we brought in alumni of the first and second cohorts, and we created this coaching layer. So people who had been through this journey served as, I would say, liaisons, or they accompanied their team, the new teams, and I think that brought in some real good perspective on a personal level. I've been through this. I know what it looks like. You might be discouraged now, but trust me, you'll get to the end. And knowing that the person who's saying this to you really did go through this creates a very credible, I think, resource for empathy, for support, for empowerment, and also a nice way to build a community between the different generations that we had.
Right, right. So I think it's a great way to just to take all and close all we've talked to till now, and it went so fast for me. But to emphasize the importance of the human abilities and the collaboration, co-creation abilities is so important. And if somebody has any like additional question, where can they approach you?
So it's a good point. So one thing is we've created a group on LinkedIn called Data Science for a Better Life. So Bayer's mission is science for a better life. That's all we do all day long, is think how can we improve lives around the world through health and nutrition. So Data Science for a Better Life is a play on that. And in there you can find information about the different activities we're doing in this domain. We also publish research that we do in this area, and there are also opportunities to join us if people are curious about growth opportunities in our organization. And we hope to be soon publishing a specific article on this program, because we think that this immersive way of learning is applicable not just in data science, in any other innovation domain, and that this is something companies hopefully would be inspired to do themselves.
Yeah.
So when that publication comes out, I'll let you know.
Sure. So it's been so, like, as always, inspiring and fun. And I'm so happy that you joined me. So thank you, Alon.
Thank you, Adi. And thanks everyone for joining today.
Yeah, thank you. And to all of you change makers out there, thank you for joining us. We'll be here for another episode next time. Bye bye.
Bye bye.